Minions. Those tiny little yellow Twinkies have dominated the box office with their billion-dollar franchise. Luka! That's me! And today we're going to be ranking all the Despicable Me and Minion movies that put Illumination on the map. I just want to rethink my life choices. These videos take a lot of time and effort to make, so if you haven't already, hit the like button down below. Also, consider subscribing if you enjoyed this type of content, and hit the notification bell down below to get notified of my future videos. And on that note, let's get started. And of course, spoilers ahead for any of the films you haven't seen.
It's about family. And that's what's so powerful about it.
Ah, Despicable Me, the film that started it all. But does it still hold up today? Oh yes it does. Our friendly neighborhood supervillain Gru is actually in competition with the other supervillains over who can be the most evil. And recently, someone has stolen the pyramids and turned it into an inflatable bouncy castle. So Gru assembles the collection of minions to brainstorm a plan to top this most recent crime. His entire motivation is to impress his mom that he's an actual supervillain.
I'm afraid you're too late, son. NASA isn't sending the monkeys anymore.
Gru plans on stealing the moon with a shrink ray invented by Dr. Nefario. Think of him as this franchise's version of Q, who was responsible for creating each gadget for James Bond. Gru heads up to the Bank of Evil because he needs a loan to finance his devious crime. While waiting in the lobby, he meets Vector, who's definitely the best character in the movie and my personal favorite villain of the franchise.
Vector! That's me, because I'm committing crimes with both direction and magnitude.
How can you not love this guy?
Oh yeah!
Gru learns that Vector is the one who stole the pyramids, and better yet, he's the banker's son. The banker guy will only consider giving Gru a loan if he steals the shrink ray. And of course, Vector steals it first. Gru tries to steal it back, but Vector's lair is incredibly secured and armed with every weapon imaginable. How did he survive that? Gru needs a way in. Until Gru remembers these three girls, Margot, Edith, and Agnes, who showed up at his door earlier selling cookies for their local orphanage. Those are the same three girls who are selling cookies to Vector. So Gru gets the bright idea of using the three girls as bait to get the shrink ray back from Vector. So Gru straight up adopts them from this wonderful woman. I mean, she's basically like, here you go. Gru is now the father of these three girls, and I never noticed the darker edge of these jokes. What was that supposed to be, blood? Gru and Dr. Nefario develop these cookie bots, so the next time they sell cookies to Vector, the cookie bots will help them get the shrink ray back. The boss is tired of these silly little girl antics and refuses to give any more money to Gru. See, throughout the course of the movie, he actually starts to care for these girls. Gru gets too busy with these little misadventures of parenting, telling bedtime stories, trips to the amusement park, and dance recital practice. Now they're broke.
In terms of money, we have no money.
He has to do it all by himself. Well, actually, it's mostly the minions who take a back seat in the plot. They're still used for comic relief, but it's more subdued. Dr. Nefario goes behind Gru's back and sends the girls back to the orphanage. He's more focused on being a scientist than a parent. He does live in Gru's basement with the minions, though. Gru successfully steals the moon and realizes he still has time to go to the dance recital that is conveniently scheduled on the same day. Because some things in life are more important than stealing the moon. When Gru arrives, he notices the recital has already finished. He sees a note on his chair from Vector telling him that he's kidnapped the girls and will only give them back in exchange for the moon. Commence the epic showdown between Gru and Vector. A battle that ends with Vector being sent into orbit because the effects of the shrink ray are temporary.
Oh, poop.
Gru reunites with the girls because at the end of the day, it's all about family. Illumination really started this franchise off with a bang. Great character development between Gru and the girls, the perfect villain with Vector, and the right amount of minion action. I feel very comfortable putting Despicable Me in S tier.
You say you don't know where the macho man is coming from?
The tagline for this movie has been, more minions, more despicable. Not only do we have these little yellow minions, but we have these purple monster looking ones too. But we'll get to that later. Because today is Agnes's birthday party. You know, she's the girl who likes unicorns and rainbows. Gru is dressed up as a magic fairy princess.
Gru's Zinkelpel, the most magical fairy princess of all.
He's committed. Apparently everyone else canceled. Gru has given up on being a supervillain and focused more on being a cool dad. Gru has been single forever and these moms are trying to set him up with everyone they know. Lady, you could read the phone book and he still wouldn't be interested. Gru has had some bad experiences with girls in the past.
Gru touched Lisa! Ew! Lisa's got crudies!
This lady named Lucy, who works for the AVL, Anti-Villain League, shows up at Gru's house. Her mission? Kidnap Gru. I guess the taser and a couple hit and runs will do. Back at AVL headquarters, they're introduced to the leader,
Silas Ramsbottom.
Bottom.
Hilarious.
Gru learns that someone stole an Arctic research lab that was developing some experimental mutagen serum that turns things purple and evil. Grimace shake, am I right? Gru obviously doesn't have time to be a father because he sells delicious jams and jellies on the side. Dr. Nefario is not being fulfilled by the lack of evil plots, so he decides to seek employment elsewhere. Thinking about his own career, this was the spark Gru needed to join the AVL on their mission. Gru and Lucy set up a faked baked goods store in the mall because apparently someone in the mall has the serum. A man introduces himself as
Eduardo Perez, owner of Salsa y Salsa restaurant across the mall.
Gru thinks he exactly resembles El Macho, a supervillain from 20 years ago. Except El Macho is supposed to be dead in the most macho way possible, riding a shark with dynamite stuck to his back into a volcano. Gru's convinced he's the villain they're looking for and goes snooping around the restaurant. All they really find is a secret salsa recipe. Meanwhile, the girls are at the mall trying to hook Gru up with a date. Margot, even manages to go on a date of her own with this really cool kid.
And my dream is to one day play video games for a living.
Gru doesn't like this because he still thinks he's the son of El Macho. The AVL bust another shop owner of having evidence of the serum and mark the case as closed. When Lucy is reassigned to Australia, we can see the close bond that is formed between the two of them. Gru is taking this pretty hard because he doesn't get very far with most women. Lucy is also feeling the same way, hallucinating everyone as Gru. Lucy freaking jumps out of a plane mid-flight to get back to Gru. Now that's commitment. Gru still believes that the AVL has got the wrong guy and goes to confront him. He reveals himself to be El Macho and he did in fact steal the serum and frame the other person at the mall. With help from a newly employed Dr. Nefario, he turns a bunch of minions into purple minions to do... But wait, Dr. Nefario is a reverse double agent that goes back to working with Gru and creates a formula that reverses the effects of the serum and turns all the minions back to normal. El Macho has also captured Lucy and strapped her to a rocket. While on a rocket hurtling towards a volcano, Gru finally gets the courage to ask Lucy on a date. They jump off the rocket just in time and the day is saved. Gru and Lucy go on a bunch more dates before getting married. I really enjoyed this film for the relationship between Gru and Lucy and the struggle for him to become a better father. A tier.
Do you want a banana? I'll peel it down and go.
Minions is, well, it's a movie. It has a beginning, middle, and end. It's batshit crazy bananas. Apparently, since the dawn of time, the minions have been looking for the most evil villain they can serve. Oh, excuse me, boss. From dinosaurs to cavemen to Egyptians, vampires, and Napoleon Bonaparte. I wonder what the minions were doing during World War II. They're never gonna show that. The minions have to keep moving, deciding to settle down in a cave where they've been for the last 150 years. Obviously, after all this time, the minions have gotten bored and depressed. So 3 minions, Stuart, Kevin, and Bob, set out on a journey to find their new boss, which leads them to 1968 New York City. I find it ironic that nobody comments on these little yellow obnoxious minions going around New York City. Also, the minions just accept what's going on in the new world, like stuff just happens to them. The minions just stumble into a shopping mall and conveniently turn to the exact secret broadcast channel that notifies all villains about VillainCon. The minions need to make it to Orlando where VillainCon is and decide to hitchhike with this family of villains. And they are by far the best characters in the movie. Their idea of a rest stop is robbing a bank. And I would love it if they were the main antagonists of the movie. They were so compelling. But no. It's the first female supervillain, Scarlet Overkill, who's the headliner of VillainCon. Scarlet Overkill as a villain is, well, overkill. Scarlet explains that the villain who takes the red gem from her hand gets the job. Yes, you guessed it, the minions get the job. Scarlet takes the minions back to her headquarters in England.
England is my city.
Her entire master plan is to use the minions to steal the crown from the Queen of England, so she can become their ruler. This kind of backfires though. As the minions evade the police with the crown, they are confronted with King Arthur's sword. Somehow Bob manages to pull the sword out of the stone and becomes the new legitimate ruler of England.
King Bob!
Well, he seems popular enough. Well, they just give the throne back to Scarlet.
I love democracy.
Also, there's this funny scene where Scarlet locks the minions in a dungeon with her husband Herb as the executioner. They try to kill the minions, but they're basically indestructible and just have fun like they're on a playground. The minions eventually escape with a mob of supervillains chasing after them. When Stuart and Bob are kidnapped, it's up to Kevin to save the day. The movie has already established that the minions are practically invincible, so it makes sense that Kevin would just swallow the explosion. For their bravery, the minions are awarded by the Queen for saving England. Scarlet tries to steal the crown again, but is stopped by a much younger Gru, so we can set up the next sequel. I have to admit, I like this movie more than I really should. It's probably the worst one in the franchise. Stuff just happens in it. D tier.
We are not identical twins. Oh no?
Despicable Me 3 is definitely a mixed bag for me. An 80s child star named Ballastar Bratt, played by Randy from South Park, wants to relive the good old days. He becomes a supervillain based off of his character from his old show called Evil Brat, which was cancelled because he hit puberty. Naturally, he wants revenge on those in Hollywood. Gru and Lucy and these really cool subs are sent to confront Brat before he can steal the Dumont diamond. Unfortunately, they're thwarted by Brat's superior skills, chewing bubblegum and breakdancing. Every time Brat appears on screen, it's followed by another licensed song. A new replacement arrives to become the new leader of the AVL. She is very pissed over their failure to retrieve the diamond and straight up fires them. Don't worry, now they can tackle the challenges of unemployment. I think it's sweet Agnes tries to help them out by selling her stuffed unicorn. Can't he just become a supervillain again? Well, actually, Dr. Nefario has been frozen in carbonite, and the minions, they've left, because Gru isn't that evil anymore. An older gentleman shows up at the house notifying Gru that he has a long-lost twin brother, Drew. We find out this man is Drew's butler. This would be like if Batman sent Alfred to make house calls to like the Joker. Gru's brother Drew is also played by the same voice actor, Steve Carell. You would know him from The Office. Drew explains that this house was actually a cover for his father's business of being a supervillain. It's filled with vehicles and advanced gadgetry that even rivals Gru's. From this point forward, the movie should be called
What's My Line?
Because there are so many plot lines. 1. Gru and Drew have a little bonding session on the beach and decide to go on some evil adventure together, trying to steal the largest diamond in the world back from the 80s guy. 2. Lucy and the girls explore whatever fake country town Drew lives in. Agnes sees a unicorn horn on display and starts a quest to find the long-lost unicorn, which actually turns out to be a baby mountain goat missing a horn. 3. The minions try to make their way through the world after leaving Gru's employment, auditioning for a singing competition that looks a lot like AGT, where's Simon Cowell, and finally end up in prison, where they soon run the entire place. They manage to break out of prison and try to search for Gru. All the plot lines eventually converge in the third act, where Brat disguised as Lucy steals the diamond back along with kidnapping the girls. So the brothers put their differences aside to stop Brat from blowing up Hollywood with a giant toy mech of himself. And you know how Gru stops him? A dance battle with the villain. I'm not kidding. Wow. Of course, this movie not only has a cliffhanger, but a plot twist. Drew, who has been acting like an inept fan of his twin brother, is actually evil. So Drew flies away with all the minions because now he's the evilest one in the family. This movie is very convoluted with multiple subplots that go nowhere. Also, the humor did not work for me as much, and the child star turned evil trope has been done better in other media. C tier.
He was despicable.
Minions: The Rise of Gru was an event. I remember the Gentle Minions internet trend was everywhere on TikTok. Basically, a group of guys would dress to the nines in suits equipped with the signature Gru hand gesture to see a showing of the movie. It became so common that movie theaters began to ban formal attire and cancel movie screenings altogether. So watching this movie for the first time after all the drama, what do I think? I mean, it's fine. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad, it's just your run-of-the-mill standard kids movie. Basically, a group of villains called the Vicious Six steal an ancient relic called the Zodiac Stone and plan to use its power to attack the AVL. Gru, who dreams of being a legendary supervillain, has been notified there's a sudden opening in the Vicious Six. I love how whimsical Gru acts because he's still a child. He's 10 years old. We even get a closer look at Gru's childhood with some questionable parenting tactics.
They better stop pulling their weight around here, or I'm kicking them out. They are killing my mellow vibes.
This film made me realize that Gru's mom has been played by an icon, Julie Andrews.
I'm very popular, y'all.
She makes not noticing the construction of Gru's first evil lair in the basement believable, which I really think is just a storage unit for all those minions. Because, oh my gosh, there are so many. I find it hilarious that after the first movie, the minions just follow Gru back home answering his help wanted ad. They just forced their way in, just like how the minions have forced their way onto our movie screens. Gru rushes to his interview with the Vicious Six inside of a store called Criminal Records. Real subtle, guys. Yeah, the references in this movie are anything but subtle, because this movie essentially acts as an origin story for Gru, with callbacks to previous films and pop culture in general. Do you want to know how Gru meets Dr. Nefario? Or maybe how he gets that cool looking jet? No? Me neither. Anyways, Gru is interviewed by the Vicious Six and is rejected because he's just a kid. I guess stealing the Queen's crown wasn't good enough. So he steals the Zodiac Stone. Naturally, they want to kill him. No honor among thieves. Another minion named Otto is given one job: protect the stone and get it home.
Did you just trade my future for a pet rock?
This movie. Gru rage quits and fires the minions but is immediately kidnapped. because Wild Knuckles, a former member of the Vicious Six, wants his stone back. Our main minion characters, Stuart, Kevin, and Bob, are tasked with rescuing Gru when they hijack a plane all the way to San Francisco.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are all domestic terrorists.
Their first attempt to rescue Gru fails with a chase through Chinatown, where they stumble upon Michelle Yeoh, who trains them in the shaman art of Kung Fu. Meanwhile, remember Otto?
That wasn't Otto!
Well, he's trying to get the stone back from the kid's uncle as they head up the coast. It's a little cute side quest road trip, what else can I say? The strongest character dynamic is between Gru and Wild Knuckles. Knuckles goes through a little midlife crisis after his henchmen just leave him alone. Gru works alongside Wild Knuckles and becomes sort of a mentor figure towards Gru. The best part of this movie is seeing these characters bond through ironically doing villainous things. The third act is where it loses me though, it's kinda whatever. The villains finally get the stone back and morph into a bunch of scary animals based on the Zodiac. And they all have to work together to stop the villain and blah 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 blah. I mean, these minions are so invincible at this point. They use their Kung Fu powers, going full Super Saiyan on these guys. The film ends with a mock funeral for Wild Knuckles, which is like the third or fourth fake-out death for this character by this point. Give me a break. His advice to Gru pretty much sums up the entirety of the movie.
Find your tribe and never, ever let them go.
Minions: The Rise of Gru is definitely the better of the two Minions films. It's well animated, has a relatively engaging story, and has enough substance to keep the adults awake. So now Gru can go shoot for the moon. Literally. A tier.
Don't you want to know where babies really come from?
And now we arrive at the most recent film of this recording, Despicable Me 4. I have to say I enjoyed myself. Maybe it's because I haven't seen one of these films on the big screen since 2017. Damn, it's been that long? I thought the opening was quite strong. It took me a little aback. Like, this is a Despicable Me movie? The animation is at another level compared to previous installments. Gru is still a part of the AVL and is tasked with tracking down criminal mastermind Maxine Lamal, former student of the villain school, Les Pompons. Yes, he's French. During the class reunion party, Maxine is rewarded for, I guess, being the best villain. His unstoppable force of evil is becoming some sort of cockroach hybrid. There has never been another bug-themed comic book character before. That would be ridiculous. As you can tell, I think Maxine is a real stinker of a villain. The best quote I could find for him online is, "I'm coming for my revenge, Gru." That's how memorable he is. Gru successfully captures Maxine and he thinks that's it. He can just go back to his normal family life. After all, Gru is trying to act as the cool silly dad towards the newest addition of the family, Gru Jr., who torments Gru and refuses to be won over to his side. Silas Ramsbottom shows up to explain to Gru that Maxine Lamal has escaped from the AVL prison. Maxine vows to seek revenge over his utter humiliation at the 9th grade talent show where Gru stole his song.
Come a chameleon.
And instead of, I don't know, pranking Gru back, his entire plan is to use this new device which turns people into cockroach-like creatures. And he plans to use it on his son, Gru Jr. So Gru and his family have to go into witness protection and relocate to the town of Mayflower, which is a safe house for all AVL agents. They have to adjust to their new lives with their new assigned code names and backstories. Gru has to act as a solar panel salesman and tries to bond with both neighbors and his son. Lucy has to try to be a hairdresser and ends up running away from an unhappy customer at the grocery store. Margot is faced with her first day at a new school, and Agnes and Edith are trying their hardest to fit in at karate class. That's a lot. If you're not invested in the characters, the plot's barely moving. My favorite part, though, is when Gru becomes a villain again. The girl next door, Poppy Prescott, threatens to reveal Gru's real identity. It's funny, she finds Gru online. Is there a villain wiki, or is he just that popular? Poppy wants to be a supervillain, so she blackmails Gru to help her with her evil scheme. I really enjoy their dynamic as they steal the mascot from Gru's former school. Principal,
übel schlecht,
really wants her badger back and contacts her best student, Maxine Lamal. Maxine has spent most of the film with his girlfriend, Valentina, filling up the Roach airship with gas. I remember this scene the most in the theater because I thought Gru's family straight up killed this lady, but she's actually fine. Now that Gru's cover has been exposed, they have to save Gru Jr. from Maxine. Gru has been trying this entire movie to connect with his son, so I guess it takes him almost falling off a skyscraper to connect the two.
That's the power of love.
The key to this film is comedy. Humor is very subjective, so if you don't find this film funny, everything else won't work for you. I have to tell you, I laughed, but like a lot. I even laughed at the Minions' off-the-wall slapstick antics. And let's talk about the Minions. I mean, they're basically a small army at this point. Silas Longbottom wants to use them as the next generation of agents. They spoof all your major superhero blockbusters with the introduction of the Mega Minions. Through a dangerous experiment, 5 minions are given superpowers. It's actually quite different that the Mega Minions don't actually save anybody and are sent to retirement after the city rejects them. I laughed so hard at how much of a pounding this villain Maxine takes. He's punched by Gru several times, falls off a skyscraper, and is ran over by each Mega Minion.
Now that's a lot of damage!
Maxine is sent back to the AVL prison where Gru visits and sort of rubs it in that he stole the song the entire time. This leads to a sing-off in the prison between the two, where we get a cameo of every previous villain from the franchise. If this was the last film in the franchise, I would be pretty satisfied, but we all know that's not going to happen, so this may be a bit controversial, but B tier. Well, there you go. My ranking of every Despicable Me and Minions movie. It was fun revisiting these movies that are often overlooked because of the overabundance of Minions. I think this franchise will continue to thrive and further entertain audiences, and I'm all here for it. Of course, this is just my opinion, so I'd love to see your rankings in the comments down below. Thanks everyone for watching. If you enjoy this type of content, you may like one of these videos. Minions.